It is the Christmas hangover. If you are a parent like we are, you are feeling the lack of sleep. You are feeling all the fun. But man, what a great day. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Hope you and your family had a great one. Man, football wise, we had an amazing one. You know what? It was so good. Let's just get into it. I am Chris Fox, and always with me is the absolute best NFL writer, Adam Hulse of Adam Hulse Sports. This is that effing morning after show. And like I said, it's the Christmas hangover show. Like, we are all feeling the effects of yesterday. But what we're going to do is we're going to funnel the football energy into the room because energy it was. And honestly, 4 out of 5 days with football, there's more than Christmas. There's for a reason to be exhausted right now. It was amazing football, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, with the NFL, like you said, 4 days worth of football. And, three of those days were like multiple games, kind of all day football type of days. We didn't just get that one on Monday. Monday was like a second Sunday. You know what I mean? It was that
Oh my
straight
gosh.
full day of games again. I'm not complaining. I love it, but like that on top of Christmas, you referenced little kids. I mean, like when we have little kids, Christmas isn't just one day. You know what I mean? Like Christmas is a multi-day, long, ongoing thing. The build up to it, all the different people you have to see because everyone wants to see the little kids and all that. It's great, but we referenced it quickly before the show. Today, that day after Christmas, this should be a federal holiday. Everybody should have today off just to reset their minds, and then move forward after that.
100% today should be a national holiday. I mean, you should like just on behalf of parents everywhere. And it's not just parents. I don't want to be biased. Like everybody has a huge buildup. Everybody has get-togethers. Everybody has to wrap presents. But you get a little extra with the parents because there's things you have to do on Christmas night. If you have more than one kid, obviously the tasks become multiplied. And then, if you're lucky enough to be around family for the holidays, like you said, it just adds on to it. Thankfully, we had amazing NFL football action. There's great college action too, but amazing NFL football action to keep us going and push us through. We're going to talk about all of it, the most of it today. Let's get into the record watch first to see how we did predicting this week's games. This week was a little rough. We had some surprises. We'll talk about them, but Kansas City comes to mind and as one of the bigger ones. But we had some surprises. The biggest thing is we predicted these games before the season ever started. This is preseason. The game, Aaron Rodgers is still healthy when we predicted these games. Okay, we don't have six major starting quarterbacks out for the season when we predicted these games. And still, I finished out with, excuse me, six. I did bad this week. I did bad. I went 6-10. You went 8-8. Last night's game did not help anybody in the records. That's gonna put me at 143-97. Still, nobody's eclipsed the 100 loss mark here. You are at 150-90. A sizable lead, 7-game lead, probably shoring up. I think we're talking about the math. I think you've pretty much shored up the victory for the best record at the end of the season. Congratulations in advance. We had eight visiting teams win, 8 home teams win. That's actually one of the lower splits we've had in a long time. That's going to put it at 102 and 137. 104 and 135 for visitor versus home. Home teams winning 135 times, visitors winning 104 of those. I don't know. That's week 16. We're going to kind of get into some of these games individually. Let's go by the day. I think is probably the best way to do this. So Thursday we had the 3 games, and they were okay. or Thursday we had the one game. We had the New Orleans Rams game, and then Saturday we had Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Los Angeles. So we'll take those as one game. Those 3 games there. Matthew Stafford and Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua just laying the wood on New Orleans all day long. Not that you didn't get some Olave points. Anything on that one, Adam?
I think that the NFL, the NFC in particular, has to watch out for the Los Angeles Rams. They are getting hot at the right time. All the talk has been about their offense, and rightfully so. Their defense shows up in big spots too. They're going to be one of those wild card teams that whoever gets matched, like whichever division winner gets matched up with them in the first round. Nobody wants to see the Rams, I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, that's a tough matchup for a first round of the playoffs for a team like the Eagles or the Lions. It's probably going to be one of those two who ends up facing the Rams. That's not an ideal matchup.
It's not. We're going to get into the stats, and the stats over the past couple weeks for the Rams. They're scary for all the other teams. How'd you guys' Christmas go? How'd your fantasy week go? We had semifinals rattling off this week. Did you make your championships? What things stuck out for you this NFL week? Just say hi. Hit us in the comments. We love to hear what you guys have to say about the fantasy week. That's really what drives us, is what you guys had going on. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Steelers go to the Super Bowl. That's what the song says anyway. Pittsburgh getting it done. Jake Browning still throws for 335, but that defense stepped up. George Pickens was on a lot of lists for do not play this week. I hope you didn't listen because kid went ham, 195, and comes out with the win. And then we have Buffalo at the Chargers. It doesn't matter who's coaching them. Chargers still can't win. Buffalo still makes it more difficult than it has to be, but thankfully they have Josh Allen. Again, my favorite for the MVP, although I don't think he'll win it after what I saw this weekend. He's still my favorite for the MVP. What'd you think about those Saturday games, Adam?
Well, I think Lamar is going to have something to say about that race after the performance that he put on to cap off the week, especially against the guy who was considered the favorite coming into this week. But yeah, those 2 Saturday games, your Steelers showed up big time. I feel like it was one of those situations where, like, there was all the buzz and all the noise about maybe Tomlin's going to be fired this year. He could be on his way out. And I feel like his team showed up for him this week. And they said, hold up, wait a second. Like, we still play for this guy, because they always have. So, maybe some of those rumors can be quieted a little bit after that. The only, somewhat concerning thing was that Mason Rudolph looked better than maybe Kenny Pickett has ever looked. So, maybe that's a little issue to look at there. And then you said it with the Chargers and Bills, right? The Chargers lose the way the Chargers always lose, and the Bills win the way they always win. The Bills played down to their competition, still snuck out the victory, and the Chargers, like always, had a chance to win it. Were right there in the end, but they always find a way to lose.
Always find a way to lose. But we had good fantasy production. Looking at it from the fantasy perspective, you got big numbers out of Stafford, out of Kyren, out of Puka, out of Browning, out of Pickens, out of Josh Allen, got you 3 touchdowns multiple ways this week. Gabe Davis went off for 130, and there was good fantasy points to be had in these off Sunday games.
Well, like I referenced the Rams offense before. Their offense has become a straight up machine for fantasy points. Kupp and Nacua. Stafford has been a top 10, maybe even a top 5 fantasy quarterback over the last month or so. He's been unbelievable. And Kyren Williams, after Christian McCaffrey, Kyren Williams is your second best fantasy running back to have right now after Christian McCaffrey. The dude has over 1,000 yards. He's only played in 10 games. He's averaging over 100 yards a game. And it seems like he gets at least a touchdown every game to go with it. Kyren Williams, unbelievable.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about the Rams because we got a lot to cover today. But, last year the Jets had 2 offensive rookie of the years. They just were lucky enough to have one on offense and defense. The Rams have 2 offensive rookie of the year candidates, both on offense.
Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing. And Stafford is getting it done. There was a lot of questions about Stafford at the beginning of the season. Our record prediction showed it. Nobody expected the Rams to do what they're doing because they weren't sure if Stafford was going to be healthy. I'm sure it took the whole season to get here, but he's here. And you don't want to play those guys. Sunday, we had just again, another amazing slate of games. We had a quarterback go over 400 yards. Ridiculous, Nick Mullins. Ridiculous. And still come out with a loss. Still come out with a loss. That's actually not as surprising if you've been watching the show all season. The big numbers a lot of times come out on losing teams. Justin Jefferson, welcome back from injury with 141. Taylor Heineke, I was on TSS Wake Up this week. I did the whole show. I said Heineke wins games. That's what he does. They, especially coming off the bench, that's what Heineke does. And he gave it to Indianapolis. Indianapolis, honestly, a little concerning. I'd be a little concerned as a Colts fan after that game. What are some other storylines that stuck out? Breece Hall, 95 plus on both ends of it. Just disgusting. Everybody knew Breece Hall was going to be a big play. I don't know if they predicted 190 all-purpose yards. Aaron Jones, welcome back. Did not see that one coming. Bryce Young goes over 300. I don't want to steal all the storylines. Adam, what else did you have from Sunday's games?
Well, I mean, I'll go right to my Cowboys for one. I mean, I did not see a defensive battle coming between the Cowboys and the Dolphins. That was way more of a, lower scoring game than most people anticipated. Went way under the number for the over under for that game.
Yes, it did.
And look, as a Cowboys fan, a little bit.
You kind of predicted that because you said it was going to be like a high-flying, super high-scoring game, and
I did.
You subtitled that. You put the fine print in and said so. Because I think it's going to be a high-flying game, it could end up just being a low-scoring game. I don't know if 22-20 is necessarily a low-scoring game, but it's just like you said, it wasn't. We were
22-20 ends up being like, a somewhat average scoring game for NFL standards. But when you see Dolphins Cowboys, you expect a lot more. The total was in the low 50s for what they were predicting. But you're right. I did say that last week, that don't be surprised if this game goes lower than most people are expecting it to. And, unfortunately for my Cowboys, another situation where they come close but can't get the job done against another top tier team. And the biggest issue with the Cowboys continues to be the drastic difference between home and away. 15 wins in a row at home. They keep struggling on the road. With that loss to the Dolphins and the Eagles beating the Giants, it's not mathematically over yet, but it's all but over that the Eagles are going to win that division and the Cowboys are going to have to go on the road in the playoffs. Danger spot for them, no matter which team they end up traveling to. It's going to be one of those NFC South teams, which are all beatable teams, of course. But on the road, the Cowboys are just not the same team.
No, they're not. And Dak will take all the blame if they don't pull it out, which is unfortunate because he has played amazing and definitely deserves the MVP talk that he's getting. But if they don't win it, he won't either. As we continue through the NFL storylines, let us know what storylines stuck out to you this week. Appreciate the thumbs up there for those who have thrown that up. Adam, you've started with the Cowboys, which is definitely worth talking about, and I'm quite sure it will pop up quite a few times in this show. What else did you see this Sunday?
Well, this Sunday, too, I mean, like another team that people kind of need to take notice of is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
Yes.
Both from fantasy-wise and NFL-wise. They are rolling right now. Baker Mayfield is playing the best football of his career probably right now, very quietly. Not getting a lot of buzz, not getting a lot of talk about, but they're on a win streak. They're putting up big numbers on offense. Their defense makes plays when they have to. They can be beaten by the pass, but they have a great pass rush, and they always shut down the run of the opposing team. The Bucs are another one of those teams we kind of referenced, like the Rams, that they seem to be clicking at the right time. You don't want to peak too early in an NFL season, and we see that every year. There are teams that peak too early and kind of fall off. The teams that often make deep runs in the postseason are the ones that get hot in these later weeks and carry a hot streak into the playoffs. And by the way, for fantasy-wise, with fantasy championships and playoffs and everything like that going on right now, you kind of want to latch on to these teams too. Like it wasn't this week, but last week that Chris Godwin went off for a massive game when he's been like more of a fade wide receiver in most weeks this season because his production's been a little bit down. So, ride these hot hands in fantasy as well, and definitely in DFS.
Yeah, and defense wins championship. I'm glad you brought that up because Tampa's defense has really stepped up. We're going to talk about Rachaad White and his presence on the top 10 list when we get into all the stats because it is overwhelmingly there. And to the flip side, yeah, Tampa Bay team to pay attention to. Jacksonville, a team to pay attention to too, for the opposite reasons, for not a single good reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
They lose, Kirk, and now Lawrence is hurt, and they clearly cannot play very well without Lawrence. It's that dynamic. It's that dynamics that the elite quarterbacks, and I will put Lawrence as one of those guys just about to break into that elite ceiling. He has the capability. I won't put him in there yet, but he is knocking on the door of elite status. And when he's not there, you see what I'm talking about. They just really weren't able to get anything going without Trevor Lawrence. That's not good for Jacksonville, someone who's supposed to win that division.
Yeah, I
Big
mean,
step.
Jacksonville may have been one of those teams, like I kind of just referenced, that may have peaked a little bit early. Remember, they got off to a slow start to the season. The middle of this year, Jacksonville was rolling. I think they won, it
Yeah.
was like 5 or 6 games in a row, whatever it was. They were rolling. They were looking great. Their defense was playing better than they were expected to. The offense was clicking. ETN was a top 5 running back in fantasy like every single week, it seemed like, during
Yeah.
that hot
No, he
streak.
was
And
killing.
now all of a sudden, ETN's kind of disappeared. Lawrence is dealing with, some injuries, and he's got some stuff going on with the knee, with the shoulder. He had the concussion scare, and they just look lost right now. They look like a mess. And they were a team that they needed the playoffs to start a few weeks ago, right? Because that's when they were playing their best football. And they still look like they have a good shot to still get into the playoffs, but they're going to stumble into the playoffs, and they are not scary to face right now.
No, they're not. They're going to have to get it together, which, I mean, to their credit, we think about the Chargers game last year. They can do it, but we'll see. Let's see. I don't know. The Detroit wins their division. We got to mention that. Despite giving up 400 yards to Nick Mullins and 141 to Justin Jefferson, they get it done as well. They built themselves a big enough lead and were able to hang on, is what happened there. But they win their division, so congratulations to Detroit. Not something that you saw. I believe I did, and they were the ones by default I had winning the division. I can't remember. We can go back and look at it next week as we really start talking playoffs. But I know you weren't very impressed with Detroit. Are you more impressed with Detroit now, or is it just a matter of again that somebody had to win that division?
Well, I would say that they're better than I gave them credit for before the season. But to me, I'm impressed with Detroit when good Detroit shows up, right?
Yeah.
Because when good Detroit shows up, they look dominant. When they can run the ball down your throat and their defense shows up and they can, when Hutchinson's getting after the quarterback and Goff's not turning it over, when those things are happening, they are a very good team and they are an upper tier team. My issue with Detroit is that team doesn't show up every week. Like we
Yes.
get turnover machine Goff sometimes, when he's throwing the interceptions, they're not really built, for that style of football. And sometimes they kind of get a little bit pass happy and get away from that dominant 2-guy rushing attack. Their defense has been all over the place. Like they've looked like a top 5 defense at times this year, and they've looked like a bottom 5 defense at other times this year. So I don't really know what their defense is at this point. So Detroit's one of those teams where when the good version shows up, they can beat anybody. But we've seen that they can struggle against anybody too.
Yeah, they've been riding that offense all year, and as we know, offense wins games, but defense is what wins championships. Green Bay, Carolina gave us a great game, which they weren't supposed to. I don't know if call it a great game. I don't know if it was executed well, but 63 points on the board came down to the wire. Literally tenths of a second that game came down to. I think if we were back in the day where they had the clock running tenths of a second, I think Carolina gets a chance to kick that field goal. But that we don't, and so they don't either. Denver drops another one to New England. Poor Denver, because they really had it going, and now they don't. Let's get into Monday. Talk about Monday's games real quick. Obviously, the big storyline here is at Las Vegas to follow suit with everyone else grinched up Kansas City's holiday. Nobody, I think, saw that coming. But what I really got out of that game is the same thing I've said before the season ever started. Not to toot my own horn, because I certainly wasn't the only one saying it. Kansas City wide receiver room is, I'm not going to call them garbage because they have potential, but they do not step up. And yesterday may have been the most prominent display of Mahomes trying to carry this entire team. There was nobody on that field playing for Kansas City except for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was playing for his city, for his team, for his coach. He had it all on his shoulders, and we saw the breakdown emotionally at the end. I mean, Kansas City's in trouble if they keep this up, Adam.
There's something wrong in Kansas City right now. I think that goes beyond the football field. Like, you keep bringing up the receiver thing, and I agree with you. You called that before the season started. I leaned more the other way that, look, they still have Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they'll figure it out, and the offense will look like it always looks. It hasn't. But, like, this off the field stuff now, and this sideline stuff, and this lack of, like, chemistry, and we're seeing Mahomes losing his temper multiple times now. Very out of character for him when you look at the rest of his career. Travis Kelce throwing his helmet during the game yesterday. It looked like him and Andy Reid were in a little bit of an argument on the sideline. They looked like they were at odds. There's something going on either in that locker room or off the field, because this is usually a team that has great chemistry. They're having fun. They're clicking. They're dancing on the sidelines, and they're, showboating a little bit. That's the Chiefs that we know when they're dominant. They have not been that, and it's getting worse as this season goes on. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of, friction. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something going on there. And again, it goes beyond football. There's a chemistry problem, a relationship problem going on with the Chiefs right now.
Yeah, the party's not going on right now in Kansas City. It always has been. And I don't want to say that they can't handle losing, that they're not used to this kind of diversity, but it's the end of the season. And there's a lot more pressure here. They've taken a lot more from the media, just with even with the whole Taylor Swift thing, which is dumb, but it adds to it. It just keeps adding up and adding up. All these things, receivers dropping balls. You got MVS dropping 3-game winners at least this season that we've seen. I mean, receivers just dropping balls all over the place. Even Kelce isn't having the greatest game. Holmes isn't getting the time, isn't making the greatest throws. We saw in that interception where Kelce got upset. It's just like you said, it's not clicking. And until it is, I mean, they need to all go out there and have a couple, take a couple days off, go in, have a big group hug, reset, pretend like it's game one, and get back on track. Otherwise, it's not looking good in Kansas City. Philadelphia gets it done in New York, but New York, was able to. New York able to do a little something, but Philly. I don't think Philly was ever in danger of losing that game. Jalen Hurts being Jalen Hurts, as he always does. To the opposite end of that, Brock Purdy gets picked off 4 times against Baltimore, and everybody except Baltimore fans had San Francisco winning this game. Everybody knew that San Francisco was the better team. Everybody knew that San Francisco was going to be in the NFC playoff game, and maybe this is a Super Bowl preview and all that. Baltimore showed up in San Francisco's house, and even on TSS Wake Up when I did the prediction, everybody said this is going to be a good game. We're going to have a great skill, blah, blah, blah. But San Francisco's at home. No way San Francisco loses this game. Baltimore came out. They didn't just say that they're the better team. They proved that they were the better team. They did it in San Francisco's house. And, man, they shoved the 49ers face in it. Congratulations, Christian McCaffrey, who showed out again. Congratulations, Baltimore Ravens, for pulling off a monster win in a hard place to play, standing up to the pressure, and picking Brock Purdy off 4 times. Wow. Just wow.
It's crazy how little respect the Ravens got going into this game, considering how good they've been for the rest of the season. And I'm guilty of it too. I felt like the 49ers were not only going to win this game, I felt like they were going to win this game big. And it felt like a lot of people felt the same way that I felt. And, in retrospect, it's like, why were we all so down on the Ravens and not expecting them to compete with the 49ers? As good as the Niners have been, the Ravens have been just as good this year. In a better AFC conference, they've been the only team in the AFC this year that's loaded with good teams that has been consistently great this year. Everybody else who is supposed to be very good in the AFC has been good at times, bad at times. The Ravens have been straight good all season long. So it's interesting that, myself included, we all doubted the Ravens going into this one.
I don't know if we were doubting the Ravens as much as we were lifting up the 49ers. I think we
maybe.
placed the 49ers on a pedestal because they are that
Yeah.
good. They are that good. They're not as bad as they played last night. I mean, they got in a little bit of quicksand. They got behind, and they didn't expect that either. And we saw some desperation out of Brock Purdy. We saw some desperation plays as they tried to get something going because after halftime, when Baltimore got those 2 quick scores, they knew they were in trouble, and it was time to ball out or lose that game, and they just were not able to ball out against that defense. Baltimore made a statement, best record in the NFL, best team in the NFL. Like you said, Lamar, we're going to talk about the MVP chase. So let's keep this hypothetical right now. But Lamar definitely made a great case for his MVP campaign, involuntary MVP campaign, because he got it done against a fantastic defense. Fantastic. If this
Yeah, I mean, he sure did. And like, if you're making power rankings right now, the Ravens have to sit at the very top of the power rankings. I made mine this morning. It has to be Ravens at 1 now after what they did last night. Also, just, last little note on Brock Purdy. All reports came out that he was cleared to go back into the game. He was not benched at the end because he was injured. The doctors told Purdy and Shanahan, Purdy is cleared. He's good to go back into the game. Shanahan decided, I'm not putting him back in this one after the 4 picks, after Darnold looked okay on that one drive. Now, I'm not saying there's any quarterback controversy. Purdy's starting next week. He's starting the rest of the year. But just interesting that Shanahan decided to do that with his quarterback that, most had as the MVP before this week, who's been, one of the talks of the NFL this year. Shanahan said, you know what, this hasn't been a good one. I'm not going to put you back in. Other star quarterbacks, top guys, that would not happen to. Like if Mahomes threw 4 picks, you think Andy Reid's telling him your day's done? Hell no.
Well, look, I mean, the guy, they've got the division wrapped up. I'm not going to risk him either. I like you said, I have no problem with this decision. I'm not an NFL coach, but I got no problem with this choice either as a fan, as a football fan. I'll tell you what, though, if this is indeed a Super Bowl preview, I'm excited for the Super Bowl this year because I will watch that game again because it's gonna come out hot and heavy. I would definitely watch that Super Bowl. I don't know how anybody else feels about it. Let us know how you feel about it. We'd love to hear. That is really this week. That's all I got to say about that. Let's get to the reason that you're really here. Let's get into the stats. QB stats. Here we go. I know you guys are here for other things than that. But gosh darn it, the stats they pump me up. I love the stats every week. That's just who I am. I like it. Plus, I put a lot of work in it. Let's see. Fox facts about the QBs this week. Here we go. Fact number 1. Maybe we'll get fact number 1. 38 QBs played this week. That's up 1 from last week. 29 threw touchdowns. That's up 2 from last week. It was a good week fantasy-wise for the QB wide receiver position. We'll get into the wide receivers later. 5 ran one, and 4 of those made the top 10. 4 scored 3+ touchdowns this week. That's actually down from last week, which is a little bit surprising. Number 1 in pass yards through 411 pass yards. If you saw the teaser that was running this week about 411, the top 10, where does 411 yards get you? It gets you to QB 11, if you can believe it. That's how good the quarterback play was this week. Number 1 in rush yards, 97, was QB 4. So the rush yards mattered this week. Number 1 for interceptions. Ended you at QB 11 again. We all know who that is. Number 1 in sacks. Somebody took 6 sacks. 2 people did, and they ended up at 24 and 25. That was Minshew and Tannehill. Got sacked 6 times. Ouch. It's a bad day. Number 1 in pass touchdowns. That was 3 touchdowns passing. There were 2 of them. They have finished up at QB 1 and 2. Coincidentally, QB 6 is the only top 10 with more than 2 sacks. QB 6 got sacked 5 times. Nobody else took more than 2. And 7 QBs had plus 300 yards this week. 5 of them made the top 10. Again, these are QB facts for all the QBs, not just the top 10 list. Adam, what sticks out here for you?
Well, I mean, touchdowns still matter, right? The guys who are throwing touchdowns are ranking higher for sure, but just in general, this is a good week for quarterbacks when it comes to
It really
fantasy
was.
football. Everyone's in their playoff matchups. There's a good chance that the quarterback you had got you a good game. For the most part, the ones you needed to show up did.
They did. And like I said, it was a good week. Moving on, let's get into the top 10. Top 10 facts. You needed 20.7 to make the top 10 list. That's almost a full point above the average. That tells you how high the score is. Wait till we get to the wide receiver scores. 8 of the 10 quarterbacks won this week. That's actually better than usual, but not better than last week, but better than usual. Only 5 of the top 10 had an interception. It was the top 5. The reason I marked that in blue as a standout stat is because we've been saying it all year, even before the season started, about the lack of importance of interceptions. Everybody wants to try and pile these interceptions on Allen and a lot of quarterbacks. If you look at the top quarterbacks, they have a lot of interceptions because they're trying to make plays or trying to win games. The top 5 quarterbacks this week, they had the interceptions. The bottom 5 did not. QB1 is the only QB without a sack. That's interesting. That hasn't happened in a while. Only 4 were here last week. Again, shows the inconsistency is across the board. It's running backs, it's wide receivers, it's fantasy season, up and down. The importance of waivers. I know we're in the semifinals, so it has less relevance now, but when you're making your DFS picks, you can't just pick the guys who were here last week, because only 4 of these guys were here last week. All 10 of your top 10 had 2+ TDs. Again, showing how big this week was. All 10 of them had more than 2 touchdowns. And I believe for the first time this season, we have no newcomers to this list. Everybody is a veteran in this list. We're still at 40. Adam, these are the top 10 facts. What stands out for you?
Well, it can be debated how much interceptions mean from like a real NFL perspective. It's more about the touchdown to interception ratio.
Yes.
You mentioned Josh Allen. Yeah, he leads the NFL in interceptions. He also leads the NFL in touchdowns, by the way. So you can gunsling and kind of take it. But when it comes to interceptions for fantasy, they really don't matter that much, right? Like what, -2 from your quarterback score for an interception versus either 4 or 6 for the touchdown, depending how your lead scoring works. Sure, like interceptions can have like a little bit of an effect, but like I'm not feeding a quarterback in fantasy just because they throw interceptions.
Absolutely. Hey, just want to remind everybody at home, look, we're going to open up the phone lines here in a little bit, so you'll be able to call in if you want. Leave your comments. Tell us about your fantasy week. Tell us about your Christmas. Tell us about what you think of the stats. Tell us anything you want. We're here for you guys. So interrupt, throw something in. If you want to talk about something we talked about a half hour ago or something we're not going to talk about for another half hour, go ahead and throw that in. We're here for you guys. Let's get to the top 10 list. Top 10 this week. Number 10, Matt Stafford. Killing it. Kid is killing it. He is here 4 out of the last 5 games. You talk about who's heating up at the right time. It's Matt Stafford. Wrapped up the division this week. Congratulations, Matt Stafford. 4 out of the last 5 games. Matt Stafford has been here. And those are his 4 times. Those are his 4 trips to the list, by the way. Talk about heating up. Number 9, Bryce Young gets a 300-plus day. His 2nd time to the list. Comes out with a loss, but, puts up your numbers. Lamar Jackson at number 8. That's his 9th time on the list, so you're not really surprised here, except for the fact it was against San Francisco. He actually moved up 2 spots from last week. Russ Wilson at number 7. That's your 5-sack guy. Got sacked 5 times, takes a loss, still ends up at number 7. We're going to talk about Russ later on in the show. Jordan Love comes out with the win. Again, we got a much better game than to watch viewership-wise than we thought we were going to. This is Love's 6th trip to the list. Jalen Hurts, he was 5 last week. He's 5 this week. He's got more trips to the list than anybody. 12 times he's been here this season. Hurts putting on a clinic. And kind of surprisingly, not as much in the MVP conversation, but we can get into that later. Fields, Strawberry Fields forever. He is here for the 5th time. Look good this week. Carry on, my wayward son. Is Derek Carr for New Orleans. Man, we expected a lot more out of Carr, but when Carr shows up, he shows up big. When he doesn't, he doesn't. I don't know. This is fourth time on the list. Number 2, he's my favorite for MVP, is Josh Allen. Wrenches out the big win this week. His 11th time on the list, just behind Jalen Hurts, getting a little more MVP play. And number 1, Joe Flacco, former Super Bowl MVP. We were talking about how he's putting up stats. He's getting the job done. He just wasn't getting the wins. Not the case this week. He also gets the win and finishes at QB1. Adam, people at home, what do you think of this?
It's an interesting list, that's for sure. I mean, Joe Flacco's been absolutely balling since he got to the Browns. Flacco's been absolutely unbelievable. You said it with Derek Carr. Like Derek Carr either puts up a massive day or puts up a pitiful day, especially when you're talking about from a fantasy football perspective. Jordan Love, we've seen him kind of go up and down, kind of like Derek Carr this year. He has some big ones. He has some bad ones. Bryce Young. Good for Bryce Young. How about Bryce Young making a late surge into the top 10 there? And just in general, once again, when you kind of look at the list, when you see your Fields, your Hurts, your Allens, your guys who seem to be in there all the time, rushing quarterbacks, man, draft them. Just draft them.
Yep. We will definitely, in the off season, at the end of the season, we get into playoff shows and all that kind of stuff, talk about how the fantasy season shaped up, strategies to look at for next year. Running quarterbacks. If they weren't on your radar, they need to be. Let's keep this train moving. These are the running back facts for all the running backs, not just the top 10. This is all the running backs from this week. Here we go. Let's see. This week we had 5 running backs go over 100, but only one of those made the top 10. We had 23 running backs had rushing touchdowns this week. That's pretty good. Not mad at that. 4 had receiving touchdowns. All right. And one actually threw one. One actually threw a touchdown. That was kind of fun to see. He did make the list, by the way. 6 had 2 or more touchdowns, and that's because your guy that threw one, that was his second touchdown for the day. It was actually first of the day, but you get the idea. 2 of those 6 made the top 10. So just because, unlike the quarterback position, you score touchdowns, you make the list. Running back position, just because you score a touchdown, you don't necessarily make the list. That's the takeaway there. 10 running backs had 5 or more catches. 10 running backs had 5 or more catches. We even had double digits. 6 of those made the list. We talk about being versatile. We talk about doing things that you're not supposed to do. 6 of the 10 running backs that had catches, they made the list. What else? Oh, go work for me. There we go. Number 1 in rush yards this week ends up at RB17. All right, so rush yards, not that important at the running back position. What does matter, number 1 in reception yards finished at RB1. We know who it is. We'll see it on the list. But reception yards as a running back, just like running yards at the quarterback. Number 1 in attempts, try again, finished at RB9. 23 attempts. 3 of your top 10 running backs, however, had 20 or more attempts. So again, it's not necessarily the volume at the running back position. Wide receiver, yes. Running back position, volume not as important. It matters what you do with it. Number 1 in receptions, also RB1 with 12 receptions this week. 12 double-digit receptions for a running back. RB1 is only 4th running back to go 40 plus this season. He went over 40. He's only the 4th. It's only the 4th time it happened. There's actually only 3 guys that have done it because CMC did it twice. Adam, there you go. What do you got?
It's all about versatility, right? It seems like, this season that's kind of been the theme for running backs. You got to be able to run the ball. You got to be able to catch passes, contributions in multiple areas. And efficiency. That's been the other thing too. Like we've seen some guys this year that are doing a lot more with less touches, or some guys that we mentioned, like last week, we brought up Tony Pollard, that he gets more touches this year, less production this year. So, efficiency and versatility seems to be the name of the game.
When you talk about that 0 RB strategy, if you're going to draft your running back, the story is find the guys that catch passes. Find the guys that put receiving yards and receiving touchdowns on the boards. Your Breece Halls, your CMCs, stuff like that. Those guys are going to do a little more for you. Get guys that go outside the box, if you will. Top 10. So now we're in the top 10 running backs. Some things about them. You needed 19.2. Again, almost a full point above the average. Running backs everybody putting on a show this week. 3 of the 10 did not have a rushing touchdown. Again, this is a running theme for the past 3 weeks. 3 of the top 10 did not have a rushing touchdown. 2 of the 4 to get a receiving touchdown, only 2 of them made the top list. So 2 other guys that had a receiving touchdown, they actually finished like way, way, way down. They were brought in like for that one play. 6 out of the 10 running backs won. 2 had more than 1 touchdown. Only 2 running backs. This has also been a running theme. Multiple touchdowns for even wide receivers and running backs. It doesn't happen a lot. Only 2 of your top 10 guys have more than 1 touchdown. Only 1 of your top 10 guys had 100 yards rushing. That was CMC. But 5 had more than 100 all-purpose yards. 1 running back went over 100 yards rushing, but 5 of them went over 100 all-purpose. Versatility. Running back 4 and 6 had 0 rush touchdowns. Running back 10 had 0 touchdowns at all, just like Singletary last night. RB7 last week, 0 touchdowns. RB10 this week, 0 touchdowns. What do you got for me, Adam?
Well, touchdowns are important, but they don't have to be on the ground, right? Like with the running backs, it's that receiving stuff that we're talking about. That 0 RB, like you mentioned before, which is becoming so popular, which, by the way, the 2 teams that I have in fantasy championships right now are both teams that I went 0 RB on. So it's a strategy that, I've dabbled with as well. It's not a strategy I fully commit to. I think that you need to always remain flexible on draft day. You don't go into any draft saying I'm doing 0 RB no matter what. I think strategy gets determined by what gets taken before you and what's on the board and what's available. But I do have to say that, again, the 2 teams that have been my best performers this year are ones that I didn't go running back till later in the draft. Yeah, it also helps that I picked up Kyron Williams off the waiver wire for both of those 2 teams. But, there's that too.
Congratulations on both your championship teams. Obviously, one of them is in a league that I know very much about. And we got a Trenches alumni match for the championship game in that one, so that'll be fun. Let's see. 49 have now made the list. We had 1 newcomer to the list. Let's find out who it is. Only 3 were here last week. That again, it just bounces all over the place. You cannot bank on the guys last week being here next week. Kills us in DFS. It's horrible. You got to play the matchups. Number 10, Bijan Robinson, 0 touchdowns. 0 touchdowns. Good enough to finish at number 10. It was the receptions. All right. He had some receptions. That's what did it. But thing of note, Bijan Robinson has made the top 10 list 2 out of the last 3 weeks. He has been here. It's his 5th trip to the list. Saquon Barkley at number 9, 2 of the last 3 weeks, 5th trip to the list. Our rookie, our first guy to the list, Chris Rodriguez Jr., just ate it up. They gave him the shot. A lot of people said he wasn't even going to touch the ball, and if he did, it wouldn't matter. Well, he proved them all wrong. He ends up at number 8. Rachaad White. Rachaad White is 4 for 4. We talked about, I break the season down for the 16 games, chapter 1. Figuring things out. Chapter 2, we get the bright spots, but sell those guys. Chapter 3, you get a little more stability. And then Chapter 4, when it really comes down to the wire, we see who steps up. Rachaad White has stepped up. He has been on the top 10 list 4 out of 4 times so far, just getting it done in Tampa Bay. Number 6, Ezekiel Elliott. Loving having Ramondre Stevenson out. As soon as you saw Stevenson wasn't going to play, you should have put Zeke in, picked him up, DFS 2 of the last 3 weeks. He really didn't score like super high. You had to get PPR points. He only had 12 attempts. He only had 27 rush yards. He only had 60 all-purpose yards. How the hell did he get 0 rushing touchdowns? How the hell did he get this high up the board? Because he had 9 receptions. That's why. It's PPR, baby. That's where you get your points. Second time on the list. Derrick Henry throws a touchdown, catches a touchdown, ends up on the list at number 5. It's his 6th time on the list. We got James Conner. A lot of people said don't play James Conner. Conner shows up. He's been on the top of the list 2 out of the last 3 games. Again, only 12 attempts. It's what you do with them. But he had 5 receptions for 67 yards and a receiving touchdown. So a receiving back and what you do with those 12 attempts that gets it done. 3rd time on the list, Jahmyr Gibbs, 2-headed monster in Detroit. This time Gibbs is the guy who ends up at the top. It seems like one of those guys is always here. And he is one of our 2 week in a row guys. One of our 3. Number 2, CMC doesn't get The number one this week, he just decided to give someone else this week. Comes in at number 2. Our number 1 rusher, the only top 10 guy with over 100 yards. It's his 12th time on the list. It's disgusting. He's been on the list 8 of the last 9 games, even against Baltimore. There he is at number 2. And of course, number 1, when you put 90 yards in the air and on the ground, there's a good chance you're going to finish as RB1. It is Breece Hall. We knew he was going to have a big game. I don't know if we knew it was going to be this big. That's this big. But that Washington defense is just getting worse and worse and worse as it goes. Top 10 list, Adam, as I went through that, what stuck out in your head?
I mean, it's the receiving. Look at a lot of the guys on this list with Breece, McCaffrey, Gibbs, Connor, Rashad White, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson. All of those guys are known to be great receivers out of the backfield. So they have kind of dominated the list this week. And look at Zeke. Look at my guy, Zeke, getting his opportunity in New England. He's been fantastic. For anybody who picked up Zeke off the waiver wire when Ramondre Stevenson went down, it's been paying off for you big time because Zeke's been great.
Yeah, he's showed up. He's trying to save Bill's job. Not that Bill's necessarily getting fired. I think he's just going to go. But anyway, yeah, that's your top 10 list. Comments, concerns, anything, let us know. Let's keep this train moving. There we go. This week, out of all the wide receivers, these are your stats for week 16. 29 wide receivers caught touchdowns. That's up. We had 10 wide receivers going over 100. That is also up. We had 2 wide receivers ran one in. We'll talk about their impact in the top 10 list. This is my favorite stat that I love to do every week. 15 wide receivers had double-digit targets. At least 2 of them caught double-digit receptions this week. The last 2 weeks, last week it was only 8 had double digits, but only 1 could pull it off. The week before was 21 wide receivers had double-digit targets. Only 1 guy could pull it off. This week, 2 of the 15 was able to haul in those double-digit targets. Good job. Number 1 in receiving yards, 265. Oh, my, bless my soul, bless my heart. It was ridiculous. And that's why Flacco's on this list as well. He, of course, finishes at wide receiver 1. Number 1 in rush yards, only had 33, finished at wide receiver 34. Probably would have finished higher with more yards. Obviously, receivers weren't running the ball a lot this time. They were airing it out. Number 1 for receptions, 12 receptions, 1 of 2, finished at wide receiver 4. All right. So, again, what you do with your attempts, what you do with your catches is what matters. 5 wide receivers with 2 total touchdowns. They all made the top 10. All 5 made the top 10 list. 5 of this week's top 10 are top 10 fantasy performers for the season. So again, the entire top 10 lists are not your top guys for the season, but 5 of them are. So you get a little consistency there. Adam, folks at home, what sticks out on this part of the show for wide receivers, all the wide receivers this week in week 16? Adam stepped away for just a second as we bring him back up. What sticks out to me, again, is those double-digit receptions and the fact that your guys with double-digit touchdowns in the wide receiver room, they all make the list. I think that's a big thing. I don't know. Adam, what do you think about this one?
Oh, yeah. I mean, touchdowns are always going to be king in fantasy just because, the weighted amount of points you get for a touchdown versus a reception or yards. For me, it's like we talked about how the quarterbacks really showed up for fantasy this week. The wide receivers showed up too. And, that shouldn't be too surprising because, they got to throw the ball to somebody, right? So if quarterbacks are having a big week, it's probably likely that there's going to be some receivers that show up as well. And then, just the double-digit targets. You always want to have guys who get a lot of opportunities. But, again, with the efficiency, you don't necessarily need a ton of volume to put up huge games. But especially for receivers, it surely helps to get a lot of targets with PPR leagues being everywhere, that you can actually have a really good fantasy day despite not having many yards or any touchdowns if you're still getting a bunch of receptions.
Absolutely. Yards after the catch. Wide receivers did have a big week. How big? They went 4 points above the average. You needed 25 points to make the top 10 list this week. If you get 25, you 23, no, didn't make it. You know, 21 didn't make it. 4 points above the average. Wide receivers 8, and they ate big this week. Only 2 of the wide receivers made a repeat appearance from last week, and they weren't the top ones. They weren't the big ones. Like again, consistency, lack thereof. When you're looking at your DFS plays, as you were looking at your fantasy plays throughout the season, now we're at the championship game. But if your receivers made the top 10 list this week, and this is how it went all season long, if your receiver made the top 10, they were in real danger and a majority danger to not make it the next week. I will go back and look at it. I don't think there's a single week where we had a majority of repeat top teners. This week, only 2. 7 of 10 are here for the first time since week 11. Since week 11. All right. 7 of these guys have not made the top 10 list since week 11. And if I made it 6, it would have dropped all the way back to week 9. Week 9 for 6 of these guys since they've been on the top 10 list. Matchups, baby. 5 out of 10 won. You don't have to win. And at the quarterback and wide receiver position, we see that a lot. 7 out of the 10 went plus 100. So that obviously helped their case. Wide receiver 1 is the second wide receiver with 50 plus fantasy points. Only the second wide receiver to go over 50, and he's not even the highest. All right. Highest, that honor goes to Jamar Chase, who had him by 0.7 points back in week 5. They are the only 2. Jamar Chase and this week's wide receiver 1, we know who it is, are the only receivers to go over 50 plus. But even after this amazing 265-yard performance, still not the highest scoring wide receiver. 58 have now made the top 10 list. We added 1 this week. We'll see who it is in just a second. Adam, what sticks out on this list, or on about these stats for the top 10 list this week?
Oh, there's some versatility here. There's some guys making comebacks. The wins thing that you brought up is something that we have talked about a lot during the weeks of this show, and it's that there's actually some benefit to quarterbacks and wide receivers on losing teams. Like I think the Washington Commanders have been a really good example of that with Sam Howell, with Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson have made their marks in certain weeks as well. And it's that, if you're always trailing and you have a bad defense, you're probably going to have to throw the ball a whole bunch just to try to keep yourself in the game. So there is some value to targeting guys in that situation. And, you briefly said it, but it's all about matchups. It's always about matchups. Fantasy football is always about matchups. DFS even more so than season long. You're not targeting players. You're not looking to build a lineup of the best players. You're looking to build a lineup of the best players in the best situations. So just because a guy is better season long and you have higher projections for the year and he's a quote unquote better option, that doesn't mean he's the better option in a specific week, depending on the matchup.
We talked about your championship game in the league that I know about. You're going up against Nat, who you also went up against in the trenches last year. And she makes more waiver wire picks every week than I've ever seen. Now, the league we're in, there's a 3 waiver wire limit. But I play with her in another league, and I swear she switches out at least half her team every week. And she's championship game in both those leagues. She knows how to work the wire. You got to work the wire to win fantasy. Stats like these, where 7 of the 10 are the first time here since week 11, 6 since week 9. It just solidifies it. This week's top 10, let's go. Top 10, T. Higgins at number 10 for the second week. He's one of our repeat performers. Browning in the loss. T. Higgins really stepping up in the absence of Jamar Chase. Number 9, C.D. Lamb. He put up the points. He was able to work that defense. Him and Prescott, they just weren't quite able to get it done. Number 8, Calvin Ridley. Started late. Like first half looked really, really bad. Fantasy-wise, but he stepped up. He got his 2 touchdowns, got his yardage, and he needs to step up for Jacksonville to have a shot. We need to get Lawrence back if they need a shot as well. Justin Jefferson, welcome back, my friend. Justin Jefferson, that guy is such a force. Justin Jefferson has been here 5 of his last 7 games, okay? And I know he had that huge stretch where he was injured, but out of the 7 games he's played, he's been there 5 times. All right, Justin Jefferson is no joke, and he appears to be back. 411-yard effort from his quarterback didn't hurt. Mike Evans, he will be in the Hall of Fame one day. He ends up at number 6. This is his 6th trip there, DJ Chark Jr. Look at you. He is the first time on the list, as you can probably imagine. That why he hasn't been here, but it is his first time on the top 10 list. Congratulations, Chark Jr. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's been here 6 times. He's been here 2 out of the last 3 games. He had your double-digit receptions. Puka Nacua, again, up for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Absolutely 195 yards. Oh, man, just torched him. His second time on the list. George Pickens. George Pickens is your one with 195, not Nacua. Nacua had like 165. George Pickens had 195. And it's his second time on the list. Puka's been here 5 times. He's been representing all season. George Pickens finally standing up. He talked a lot of crap. He took a lot of crap for it. If you're going to talk a lot of crap, you better back it up. And Pickens was able to do that this week. So he'll take a little less heat for saying something. I have to say, as a Steelers fan, I don't respect a guy that doesn't stand up for the team. You got to block. So he's going to have to earn that respect back for me. And, of course, number 1, Amari Cooper. Woo! Look at this catch. It was awesome to watch. Amari Cooper, he's been here a few times. Absolutely ridiculous. Finishes at number 1, 265. Obviously, he sticks out on the list, Adam. What else sticks out for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, interesting stat that I saw on Amari Cooper. He's only the second player in NFL history, along with Terrell Owens, to have a 200-yard game with 3 different teams. Only the second guy. Only him and T.O. have ever done that. So pretty amazing stuff there from Amari Cooper. You know, what's a couple things that stick out to me with this list. Of course, volume, right? CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, guys like that get high volume pretty much every single week when they play, and that helps them get consistently great numbers in fantasy football. But something else I'm seeing with this list is to take advantage of those injury situations and elevated offensive roles, right?
Yeah.
You're Calvin Ridley, you know, like without Christian Kirk, without Zay Jones, you had to expect he was going to get a heavier workload than usual. He turned that into big production. Same can be said with T. Higgins. He fills in for an injured Jamar Chase. He cracks into the top 10 list with probably his best game of the season. So those are always things that you need to pay attention to also when you're setting your lineup, when you're building something out for DFS. Guys that are going to get more opportunities than they normally would. More opportunities usually means better things, and at least they have, you know, a higher ceiling and a higher floor. So again, guys like Higgins and Ridley, I like to see them stepping up in those situations.
Yeah, not even close. It was 100% T. Higgins' best game at 140 reception yards. His next highest is 110. You talked about, you know, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 2 on the season. Amon-Ra St. Brown, number 3 on the season. We got Evans at number 6 on the season. Puka at number 7 on the season. So, you know, these guys show up. They show up when they need to, but they show up big. And Lamb and St. Brown and Evans, they do it on a consistent basis. Maybe not always making the top 10. We talk about how inconsistent the top 10 list is, but really, you know, each week, you're talking about, you know, roughly 30 to 36 wide receivers that are playing. So really top 10 is the elite. If you're finishing, you know, if your wide receivers finishing in the top 20 and you can put a couple of those on your team, you're probably doing pretty good from a fantasy perspective. Wide receiver list, I think next year I will expand the top 10 to make it a little bigger because I don't like to pigeonhole wide receivers. There's so many playing every week. I think you got to look more than 10 at this one. But this is the top 10 for this week. If you are in the championship game, first of all, congratulations. And you probably have a couple of these guys on your roster. That's a stat train. And it's time to get to what I consider probably, I've said it multiple times. It's my favorite part of the show. It's the Pulse with Hulse. Adam Hulse joins us every week, NFL writer at sportskita.com. Sportskita with a K, put in Adam Hulse. He cranks out fantasy content, NFL news. He just cranks it out all week long. And so every week we ask him 3 questions, at least 3. We did 4 last week. We ask him 3 questions. He has no clue what the questions are about today's NFL game, fantasy game. Feel free to come in with your own comments, your own questions. Adam's here for you. You can ask questions too. Go ahead. Adam, our first question. we talked about Dallas. We talked about Kansas City. Dallas is having a hard time on the road. Kansas City having a hard time in general. Both these teams are probably going to end up with road playoff games, something that they're not used to, and honestly is not great for the Cowboys. Who's actually going to make it out, if either of them? Can either of them withstand road playoff games?
Well, fortunately for Kansas City, they will be at home in the first round of the playoffs because nobody's going to catch them in their divisional race. And then, for the Cowboys, when it comes to their first round, it's almost definitely going to be at one of those NFC South teams. So I do think that both the Cowboys and the Chiefs are going to find their way out of the first round of the playoffs. But then when it gets to those conference semifinals is where things are going to be interesting. In all likelihood, the Cowboys' second game, there's a very good chance that that second game is going to be at San Francisco, the team that has knocked them out 2 years in a row now, a team that destroyed them in the regular season this year, and a team that they have not really been able to get past in recent years, and they haven't really done well against anybody on the road. Look, I'm a big time Cowboys fan, and I'm always going to be optimistic about the Cowboys' chances, even in those worst situations. But all things considered, with where the Cowboys stand, how they've been this year, how Dak has performed, and facing the team that they haven't been able to beat for years now, it would be there's not much of a worse situation for the Cowboys than if in the second round if they have to go on the road to San Francisco. When it comes to the Chiefs, look, they still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Andy Reid.
The Chiefs have not locked up this division. We have to bring that up, all right? Because Las Vegas is 2 games back. We got 2 games left. I'm not sure how the tiebreaker is going to come out at the end, but Kansas City has not quite locked up this division. So, I got it. They're probably not going to drop the next 2 games. So I'm in line of thought.
Look, it's not mathematically over, but it's over. Like the Chiefs are going to win that division, in my opinion. Too much. Like that's too much to ask for it to not happen. But realistically, they can be the 4 seed in the AFC, which is unfamiliar territory for the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Like they're usually the 1 seed, and if they're not the 1, they're the 2. Like that's usually where they stand. So their second playoff game, like the Cowboys, is most likely going to have to be on the road. And unless there's an upset in the wild card round in the AFC, that second game is going to be at Baltimore, which we've seen what Baltimore can do now. Now, that's a big game for the Chiefs, obviously. That's a big game for Lamar Jackson, because a lot like Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson has not really played his best football in the postseason, and he's really looking to make his mark beyond the regular season. Dak has a lot of good regular seasons, so does Lamar Jackson. Neither of them have been great in the playoffs. Now, again, if it was me, if I had to pick one team that I think can go further in their situations between the Chiefs and the Cowboys, as much as it kills me to say it, it's the Chiefs. Because of the experience, they've already proven they can win in the postseason. Mahomes, he's already got 2 rings, 2 MVPs. We know all of that. And the Chiefs look lost right now. And I mentioned before that there's chemistry and relationship things going on. They still have a couple weeks to figure that out, right? And they know as well as anybody that right now isn't so important because they're going to the postseason. It's then that matters most. And I think they're going to recognize it as well, that they need to solve whatever it is they need to solve. And given their pedigree, there's a good chance that they're going to figure it out. Even if they're not the same Chiefs this year as last year, who really wants to play the Chiefs right now? If you're the Ravens and you're the 1 seed and you get a bye in the first round of the playoffs and then your first game is against the Chiefs, I'd be pretty pissed off about that if I was a Ravens fan. Because it's like we did all this work to get the 1 seed just to get to play Mahomes in our first playoff game. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, maybe not the outcome you're hoping for in that, but I think they're up to it. I think they'll definitely welcome the challenge. 4 teams have a plus 149. I made it 149 for 150 to put the Dolphins in there. 4 teams have a plus 149 differential. The Cowboys are the only team not sitting in first of their division. And look, Philly, Dallas, they got to play Detroit, and then they have to play a divisional game on the road at Washington. I know it's Washington, and you want to say, oh, that's an easy win. Dallas, not making anything easy on the road. So you still have to be worried about that. Kansas City, they've got Cincinnati, and then they've got the Chargers. The Chargers, you can't win a game in the last one. Side note, Philly, they got to play Arizona and the Giants. So Dallas in trouble for that division right now with Philly having the Cardinals and the Giants as their last two games. It doesn't look good for Dallas to win that division. It does look good for Philly to become the first NFC East team in like almost 2 decades to win this thing twice. Hadn't happened in a long time. Looks like it might happen this time. Question 2. Real simple. Russell Wilson, is he gonna be wearing Bronco orange next year?
Yes, he will be wearing Bronco orange next year because of his massive contract. Like, what do the Broncos do with that contract if he's not a Bronco next year? Nobody's trading for Russell Wilson and that contract right now because he's not worth that much that he's getting paid. I still think Russell Wilson is a good quarterback, not an elite quarterback anymore like he used to be during his best days in Seattle. So nobody's acquiring that contract. It's way too big to cut him. You know, you don't cut a guy like Russell Wilson anyway, but especially with not with that kind of financial penalty, and especially when you sold the farm to get Sean Payton there as well. Sean Payton's not there for a rebuild. He's there to try to win now. And if you do something crazy with Russell Wilson, you're now in a spot where you're trying to rebuild, you're trying to find a new quarterback, and you don't have any financial flexibility to do it for years to come with all the dead cap money that would come with a Russell Wilson situation. So them committing that contract to Russell and them making that move for Sean Payton, for better or worse, that's what the Broncos are stuck with.
Could we see a quarterback controversy? Could we see someone come in to compete for that job? Not necessarily a rookie, but could we get, a decent veteran? There are people whose contracts are up. You got guys like Kirk Cousins. You got, there's some notable guys that are going to be on the market. Could Russell maybe lose his job? I mean, he's not performing. We had a stretch, and it's not all Russell's fault. The running back room isn't helping any. Honestly, the wide receiver room, because of injuries, isn't helping much. There's a lot of things to it, and I know Peyton's not there for a rebuild, but you got to do a little something because what's going on right now ain't working.
Yeah, again, because of the contract, I just don't see that happening. You can't bring in a Kirk Cousins and still have Russell Wilson on the roster, because it's going to eat 50% of your salary cap. Like, let's not forget that as much as we all love Kirk Cousins is a businessman. We remember everything that happened when he was with Washington. He's going to make sure he gets paid. He's not going anywhere and taking some kind of a veteran discount or some kind of a pay cut to go to a different situation. Kirk Cousins, he's going to get paid, whether it's by the Vikings or by somebody else. That's what Cousins wants, like he's a real nice guy and we all love his personality and this and that and whatever, but he's pretty cutthroat when it comes to the money stuff. So no, I don't see that as a possibility just because it'd be too expensive for the Broncos. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted somebody or something like that, but they don't have any first round picks anyway. So it'd be, more like a mid-tier type of quarterback developmental project. Again, like I said before, they went all in to get Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. When you go all in, it literally means that. That's where all their chips are. They're on Payton and Russell Wilson, and getting those two guys have severely limited their flexibility and options to do other things in the near future. They kind of just have to ride this out and have faith that year 2 with Sean Payton. We always talk about the year 2 stuff, right? Year 2 in a new system is usually better than year 1 with a new system because you get that full off season between seasons instead of that abbreviated off season when the guy first came in. So that's going to be the spin that the Broncos put on it, is that expect improvements next year now that we have a full off season and year 2 of the Sean Payton system. That, by the way, flashed some potential this year, because there were times this year where I was high on the Broncos. I believe you liked the Broncos for a little bit in the middle of this year when they were playing well. And a lot of people started believing that this is going to be a team that gets into the playoffs and could be a team that nobody wants to play because of the way that they were playing. Their defense was stepping up. They have an experienced playoff quarterback in Wilson, an experienced head coach, Super Bowl winning coach and quarterback in Wilson and Payton. I mean, the wheels kind of fell off late in the year, but that's how you spin it for next year. We were close this year. We're going to be better next year, and now watch out.
super tough for them to make the playoffs at this point just because of the math. They've got good matchups. They got the Chargers, they got Las Vegas, but it is going to be tough for them. Cleveland one win away from solidifying their role in the wild card spot. Buffalo right on their heels. Buffalo has a tough road. They've got two division games with New England and then Miami. Buffalo, Miami, Week 18. Thank you, fantasy gods. Thank you, NFL scriptwriters. Um, of course,
Well, Buffalo, by the way, Buffalo, if they win this week against New England and Miami loses to Baltimore, week 18, Dolphins Bills is for the division title.
let's
That's for all
go.
the marbles.
I
All the
love it.
Bills need is for the Ravens to beat the Dolphins, which obviously is something that can happen. That's not a big ask. And
No,
they should, keyword should, destroy the Patriots, though the Bills always seem to play down to their competition. So they'll probably win by a game winning field goal as time expires, will probably be how that plays out. And then week 18, you're always looking for that flex game in the last week of the season. That's going to be the Sunday night. If Bills Dolphins is for the division, that's your game.
yeah. Um, so of the wild card teams, we got. I'm going to put Cleveland in. I think they can win one of the last two games. They've got the Jets up next, which is nice. Then they got a divisional game against Cincinnati, so that one could go either way. But I think they can take the Jets next week. So I'm going to put them into the wild card. Buffalo, I like them right now, and so that leaves the Colts, Texans, Steelers, and Bengals with 8 wins. Technically, Las Vegas and Denver are not eliminated, but they have to play each other in the last game. So one of them is going to take care of the other one, and that's they need a lot of help. So of the Colts, Texans, Steelers, and Bengals, picking up that last wild card spot, we're going to do this for both of them. So question 3 is a two-parter. Which one are you? Do you not want to play? And this will be, this will obviously be the number 2 team versus this last wild card. But you got Colts, Texans, Steelers, Bengals. If you're the number 2 team, who do you not want to play for the AFC?
Um, for me, it's still the Bengals that I wouldn't want to play if I was the 2 seed. Just because of the weapons that they have, like if Chase is healthy and they have all of their weapons for them, they have Chase, they have Higgins, they have Mixon, and not just the weapons, but this is a team and a head coach that has plenty of playoff experience, a team that has already won the AFC and gone to the Super Bowl. Now, I know it's different without Joe Burrow, obviously. Like that's
Yeah, sure.
obviously a huge loss to not have Joe Burrow. But still, I mean, like the rest of the team has kind of been there also. And, the Texans, that's another team that peaked too early. We talked about peaking too early. The Texans definitely peaked too early. The
Yeah.
Colts have been, consistently solid, but like if I'm a 2 seed, I'm kind of hoping it's the Colts, right? Because they're a
Yeah,
very
right.
beatable team. They play solid. They usually don't beat themselves, but like there's not a whole lot to be afraid of when it comes to the Colts in a playoff game type of situation. The Steelers can always make noise, but yeah, again, if I'm the 2 seed, if I had to pick one team that you listed to eliminate from contention, it would still be the Bengals.
Yeah. I think it's Houston. I think if you get a healthy Stroud, you get a healthy Collins, you get Brown. I don't want to play Houston. Actually I'm looking at Houston personally, but I understand your case about Cincinnati, and I certainly wouldn't argue it. We are with NFL writer Adam Hulse. We are doing the Pulse with Hulse. 3 questions he's completely unaware of. Uh, we are in question 3, part 2 for the NFC side of the house. A lot of look, it's still open. The Rams are sitting in the 6th spot, and Seattle sitting in the 7th spot with 8 wins. We got 2 games left. So if they can win one more, that's going to take care of a lot of it. Off the bat, again, we talked about the Rams. They're kind of very dangerous right now. I don't know. We'll see what actually comes out of that. Seattle and the Rams. Sorry, Seattle has Pittsburgh and Arizona. So you figure out of those 2 games, Seattle should be able to get at least one of those. But they may need both of them. I don't know. The Rams have the Giants in San Francisco. So Giants next week, winnable game. San Francisco, we'll see what happens. We know how hot the Rams are. And in week 18, San Francisco may, they may sit all their starters. So the Rams have a nice shot at making the playoffs as well. That said, Minnesota, Atlanta, Green Bay, New Orleans, and the Bears are all still knocking on the doors. The Bears are not mathematically eliminated, especially since they have to play Atlanta next week. That's going to be a huge game. I would say that the loser, if the Bears lose that one, obviously they're out. Atlanta in deep, deep trouble if they lose that one. But the Bears technically not eliminated. However, Green Bay is going to have something to say about that. Minnesota's going to have something to say about that. I mean, the NFC is kind of wide open still, and it's going to come down, I think, to week 18, which is obviously kind of cool. But Green Bay and Minnesota play each other next week. Loser of that game is basically eliminated as well. So that's going to be a big game between Green Bay and Minnesota. So you got Atlanta playing Chicago, Green Bay playing Minnesota. It may not matter because Seattle and the Rams hold their own destiny in their hands. Same question. Whoever finishes at number 2, which will probably be the Eagles, but whoever finishes the number 2 seed, who do they not want to play between the Rams and the Seahawks? Or if there's another answer there, but I don't think there is, and I think the answer is a little obvious for that one.
It's the Rams.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
no doubt about it, for sure. It's
Yeah.
the Rams. The Seahawks have not looked the same this year as they looked last year, which is kind of a bummer because I know both of us were pretty high on the Seahawks coming into this
They
year.
were my
And I
Super
kind
Bowl
of
pick.
said too that like I expect Geno to regress, but I think that it won't matter because the rest of their roster is so good. Well, I was wrong. Geno did regress, so I was half right, but the team just does not look the same as it did last year. They don't have the same pop. The
Just can't get it.
Rams, this is a young, talented, excellent team that's clicking at the right time. Stafford looks healthy right now. He didn't look healthy all of last season in the little bit that he did play. And he might have still been dealing with some of that earlier this year as well. Over the last month, I mean, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL in the last month. And then, we talked a lot on this show already about the Rams and about Puka and about Kyron and everything they have going on. And, the only name we haven't mentioned really with the Rams, I mean, minus Aaron Donald, of course. Let's not forget about Sean McVay and how good of a head coach Sean McVay is. He knows how to design offense. He knows how to get the best out of his players. He's one of the best schemers in the entire NFL. Sean McVay, I saw a crazy little fact about McVay also. He's been the head coach of the Rams, 7 or 8 years now? Did you know that still this season he's the youngest head coach in the NFL? So he's been with the team
I don't think it'll be that way next year.
Yeah, like he's approaching like a decade as a head coach already, and he's still the youngest one in the NFL. That's amazing. The guy's already been to a Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls, and won one of them. Like, let's not forget what Sean McVay is capable of. And remember, like, there was like rumors this offseason that McVay was going to retire and go to broadcasting. Do you remember that whole thing that was going on with McVay? And then now he seems rejuvenated. He seems ready to go. I think he's just as excited about Puka and Kyron as all of their fantasy owners are, right? Like all the people who have them in fantasy, they love these guys. I think McVay's super excited too because we know how they went all in to win that Super Bowl and traded away all their draft picks for veteran guys and win now guys, and it paid off for them and it worked. And it kind of felt like the dark ages of the Rams were coming with how bad they were last year and having no assets to rebuild. Props to Les Snead and Sean McVay for rebuilding on the fly, and they have like a superstar offense again, and they did it without any top picks in the draft and without any free agent signings. So props to the Rams with what they're doing over there.
We've talked about Coach of the Year stuff, GM of the Year. That might be the Rams. This has been the Pulse with Hulse. Adam Hulse, NFL writer at sportskita.com, breaking down 3 questions. I love the fact that you don't know what they are and you still you run with it. Like, go Hulse, go. At Adam Hulse Sports on the X if you're in there. Let's go to this week's schedule real quick. Talk about the fantasy perspective of this week. New York at Cleveland on Thursday night. This game is big for Cleveland. It can get them in the playoffs. Cleveland clicking on all cylinders. Flacco, of course, QB1, which means he probably won't be on the list this week, especially with that New York pass defense, but we know you can run on them. Cleveland, I think, will win this game. I don't know if you play. Do you take the risk in the championship game? I don't think so. DFS-wise, you got any winners here?
I mean, if there's anyone I like for DFS in this game, is it's probably Jerome Ford. I know he hasn't been great lately, but this Jets defense, the way you beat the Jets defense is you run it right down their throat.
Sure.
Like I don't see this being another big Flacco game or Cooper game with how good their outside corners are. But
Uh-huh.
look, just this game in general, everything's clicking for the Browns right now, right? And the Jets
Yeah.
have kind of been a mess this year, but they've still kind of played well despite their bad record. Weird things happen on Thursday nights, right?
They
And this is
do.
the final Thursday night game of the season. It wouldn't surprise me if the Jets upset the Browns in this spot. It just kind of feels like one of those situations where even if the Jets don't win the game, it might come down to a field goal at the ends for it to go either way. I don't expect a runaway at all. I can expect a competitive game
Oh
that's going to
yeah.
be decided late.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. It's not gonna be like the super high scoring, some dominant performance.
No,
And
no, no.
honestly,
16-13 or something like that.
yeah, you're gonna have to like defensive football to watch this game. And I'm not saying you get like an amazing defense, but it's the offenses are gonna struggle. This is gonna be a low scoring one for sure. Detroit at Dallas, everything to love about this game. Dallas at home, double it up on that one. Dallas players play them all. Detroit players play, play your Gibbs, play your Monty, play your Amon-Ra, St. Brown, play your Goff. Like this is the DFS game, possibly the DFS game of the week. I mean, this one should be really big. I'll take the over. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This should be, start everybody in this game. The only guy I'm a little bit cautious of in this game is Tony Pollard.
Always.
He's been better, like later in the year than he was earlier in the year. But when the Lions get beat by offenses, it's almost always in the passing game. They do still
Sure.
have a very solid rushing defense. And me and you are both still perplexed why the Cowboys don't use Pollard as a receiver more. They have seemingly just refused to do it for whatever reason. So unless this is the week that they finally decide to throw him the ball, I'd be cautious with Tony Pollard.
Yeah. What are your guys' DFS plays this week? What do you guys like? Come along with us for the ride. Throw it up in the comments. We love to see it. New England at Buffalo. I like Buffalo to win this one. I like Josh Allen to make the top 10 list again, to do what Josh Allen does. I like Buffalo to make it harder than it should be. But Buffalo needs this win, and I think they'll come through. DFS plays. A lot of people don't like Gabe Davis. I like Gabe Davis. I love to throw him in there again. Not championship wise, but a nice value pick on your DFS matchup. And especially since Diggs is not a guy you can spend money on every week. Josh Allen, Gabe Davis stack there won't cost you it'll even out as you go down your roster. There's probably better plays at quarterback. I like Dak as a better play at quarterback. I actually kind of like Goff as a better play at quarterback. But I don't know. Maybe not a lot of obvious choices for DFS in this one, just depending on how you shape your roster. I think Allen could be somewhere to go. And maybe Zeke too. Zeke could get you some value as well. That Buffalo defense susceptible.
That's what I was just going to say. Was Zeke is another. I mean, as long as Ramondre's out again,
Yeah.
Zeke is another solid play because again, the way you beat the Bills defense, you also run it right down their throat, especially without Matt Milano in the lineup. If Ramondre is playing, I wouldn't start either of them. Like I'm not saying start
Okay.
Ramondre if he is playing. I'd do a double fade and start nobody on the Patriots if Ramondre is playing. And yeah, like I'm not as excited about Josh Allen this week as you are because I've referenced a couple times that the
I
Bills
was
like to
gonna say
play
that.
down to their competition. Obviously, in season long, you're always starting Josh Allen no matter what. This isn't the week I would pay up for him in DFS. I'm not paying up for Stephon Diggs anymore either because he has not been very good lately. He's been pretty disappointing in the second half of this season. I'm with you on Gabe for DFS stuff just because his ceiling is so damn high. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like he legitimately, it's insane. He has wide receiver one ceiling on a weekly basis, but he also has the floor of literally 0 points. You know
Yeah,
what I
he
mean?
100%
Like,
does.
like it's not exaggerating to say you can expect anywhere between 0 and 50 for Gabe Davis in any given week. Like it's
But
unbelievable. So like he's
but if you
always a good
catch him,
dart throw in DFS because of the upside. He's a guy I don't love in season long.
you win some DFS money. Atlanta and Chicago, playoff implications for both. If Chicago loses, they are definitely mathematically out. Atlanta trying to stay alive to grab that wild card spot. Again, they have to look at the guys above them to make it. DFS wise, I always like Fields. The Fields feels more combination, but be careful. Check out your shadow report. Atlanta does pretty well on outside receivers. From the Atlanta side, I don't know. That Chicago defense has gotten a lot better, so I don't know if I like anybody in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago defense very quietly has been playing great lately, and
They
all
really have.
season long, Atlanta's defense has quietly been playing great.
Yep.
You said it with Fields, like I'm obviously starting Fields, but there's really nobody else that I'm super excited to target in this, especially for DFS wise. I'm completely avoiding this game altogether for DFS. When it comes to season long, of course, you're probably going to start Bijan, though I don't love him this week. Drake London, I guess. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those games where like the top guys, like you kind of still have to use in your lineups for the most part in most situations, but like you're not super excited about it. DFS, no thanks.
Can you win a game without completing a pass in over 45 minutes of gameplay?
You
You
sure
can,
can.
because Las
You sure
Vegas did
can.
it. They did not complete one pass since the first quarter, and they come out with a win. Las Vegas at Indianapolis, and for that reason, I still, this is a game I think Las Vegas gets on track, but Aiden O'Connell's not going to put up huge numbers. That doesn't mean that Adams can't put up numbers, that Jacobs can't put up numbers. On the other side, I like JT, and hopefully Pittman Jr. is healthy. I don't mind, your top guys for DFS plays in this one. I'm just not going to reach. But when you're spending your money, and you got to, taper down a little bit. I don't know if Josh Jacobs and Adams and JT are necessarily. They might value themselves out. Like their price tag may be too high for what you're going to get in this game. But I think they'll put up numbers. I just don't know if you want to pay for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. You play him in season long, probably
Yeah.
not going to do it in DFS. Hey, look, like one name we haven't mentioned yet, a guy who was like a late fill-in option this past week. What about Zamir White, man? He
Yeah.
had a great
Yeah.
game, put up a ton of yards against that very good Chiefs defense. If
He did.
Jacobs happens to be out again this week for whatever reason, Zamir White, super cheap DFS play that if he's starting, get him in there.
You're in your championship game and you got the Rams versus the Giants. Congratulations. Like you're getting some points. I like the Rams players DFS wise. Play them all. Your guys, your Stafford, your Nuka. Nuka. That's what I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna call him Nuke. He's the Nuke machine. And of course, Kyron Williams against New York Giants. Giants, you're not playing anybody in any situation, but you're gonna pay up, and it'll be worth it for Rams at New York.
Oh yeah, you can stack Rams in this one. Like get them all in for season long. For DFS, like you can kind of mix and match which kind of stack you want to use for your Rams, but they are all good, right? You can
Yeah.
do Stafford and Puka, Stafford and Cup, Stafford and Kyron, Kyron and Puka. Like those four guys, you can do any combination of them,
That's
and
really
it
true.
all makes for a great stack this week.
Pull all three of them in there. No one's gonna follow you for that. You might
Yeah.
definitely be able to pull that off. It'll cost you, but it'll be worth it. Arizona at Philly. Look, Philly's pass defense not good. Philadelphia's pass defense is not great. So if you're looking for that, you only got a few dollars to spend on that last receiver. Look at a Wilson. Look at an Arizona receiver, because Philly's pass defense is not great. Other than that, you can probably play your Philly guys. Arizona at Philly.
Yeah, I mean, Philly's pass defense just made Tyrod Taylor look like a superstar all of a sudden. Philly's
Absolutely.
pass
Yeah.
defense has been atrocious, which makes me love Kyler Murray this week. I think this could be a good Kyler Murray game. His first two games back were very good.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he hasn't been so great. But this Philly passing defense has been giving it up to everybody. DFS, you can go really cheap actually on Kyler Murray these days, and he has a ton of upside for a guy in his price range. We know what he can do with the rushing touchdowns as well. If he can scramble around that pass rush with Billy, he could have a big day for sure.
He could. New Orleans at Tampa Bay. Tampa, should win this game, but New Orleans have been putting up numbers. I don't know if they'll be able to do it against this Tampa Bay defense. It is a divisional game. So anything can happen. Carr has had 3+ touchdown weeks in the last couple of weeks. Olave has gotten you some fantasy points. Tampa's really the team to watch, though. I mean, they're on fire. That's plain and simple how it is. And Rashad White, like I said, Rashad White has made the top 10 all 4 of the last 4 games. So, he's kind of hot right now, too.
Must win game for both teams for this playoff race, for the playoff picture in the NFC.
Yeah.
When it comes to, fantasy, especially DFS, I'm fading both running backs from DFS. I'm not spending up on Rashad or Kamara this week. Like, I know that they do a lot in the receiving game, but both of these run defenses have been pretty stout. That if I'm spending up for a high price option in DFS, those aren't at the top of my list of guys I'd want to do it with. Love Olave this week. Absolutely love Olave. And hey, like, if you want a cheap upside DFS option from this game, for me, it's Rashid Shaheed. He's not a guy I'm putting in my season long lineups, but he is dirt cheap from a DFS perspective. The Bucks defense gives up a lot of big plays in the passing game. Shaheed's kind of been their big play guy. I like him a lot as a dart throw in DFS.
That's actually a really great dart throw too, because he's that guy. Man, I don't have any money left. I want CMC on my team. Pair CMC with a Rashid.
Get your Ram stack, complement it with a little bit of Shaheed, and there you go.
Let's go. San Francisco at Washington. Oh, yes, please, baby.
My goodness.
Yeah, let's go. CMC. Yes. Debo. Yes. I'll spend, if I'm spending somewhere else, I'll take a value pick with Ayuk. Brock Purdy CMC stack might be worth the money this week against that Washington defense, who's just absolutely atrocious, giving up huge numbers. Obviously, we're not playing anybody in Washington. It's too inconsistent. And against the San Francisco, this is a lovely game for San Francisco to rebound off of after that Baltimore game. And they have nothing to apologize for. Baltimore's just a lot better team than people gave them credit for. San Francisco still one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, for people playing in their fantasy championships this week, if you got Niners on your team, oh my goodness, like it couldn't be any better than this situation right here. Washington's defense is awful against everything. They're bottom five against like every statistical category, passing, rushing, points, touchdowns. They get no pressure on the quarterback. They force no turnovers. That defense is a disaster. So this is that get right game that the Niners need after that ugly loss against the Ravens. My goodness, you are so excited for season long if you're in the championship this week and you have any of those guys, Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, McCaffrey, any of them. They're all, top five options this week at their respective positions for sure. And just like we said about the Rams, like you can kind of make any stack you want and it's good for DFS this week. Same thing with the Niners. Use any of these Niners in DFS this week. They should all be able to eat.
100%. Carolina at Jacksonville. Jacksonville better step up. Carolina's pass defense is not an easy win at all. They are top 10 in fantasy points given up to wide receivers as far as low end. They don't give them up. And Jacksonville, Lawrence, they got to win. We'll see what happens. They'll be in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't like this game for fantasy at all. You kind of said it, with the receiving thing. It makes you cautious with a guy like Ridley. This is the kind of game that, like, I should love ETN, right? Because Carolina's rushing defense has been awful, right? But ETN just hasn't done it lately, He's been so off fantasy-wise. He looked like he was going to be the RB2 behind Christian McCaffrey for a while. Remember when he was just rattling off top fives every week, and we kept talking about ETN and what a strong year he was having, and he got a lot of hate before the season from the fantasy community. Everybody was predicting he'd drop off, and he had this awesome first half of the season, but it's been nothing like that down this stretch. And again, like, I should love him in this matchup. Maybe the Jags go back to him because they're desperate for a win right now too. I think they've lost 4 in a row, right? The Jags. And if they lose this game, they are in serious, serious danger of missing the playoffs. They need a win here. Maybe they get back to their bread and butter with Trevor Lawrence banged up, with the receivers dealing with some injuries as well. Maybe this will be that big feed ETN that they need to get back to.
Yeah, chapter 2, weeks 5 through 8, he was 4 for 4 in the top 5 for running back, not top 10, top 5.
Yeah.
I think he could be a good value. You need that flex play. You need that value RB pick. If you're looking for ceiling, ETN, because Carolina does have the worst run defense in the NFL, and they let Aaron Jones go for 127. Miami at Baltimore, that'll be the morning game of the week. You want to automatically say, temper your expectations for Miami, guys. You want to say, look what Baltimore did in San Francisco. Be careful with your Miami plays this week. I'm telling you, don't do that. Miami has proven time and time again that they're going to eat. Baltimore is fantastic. CMC still went over 100 yards. Debo still had a decent game. Baltimore may win this game. Miami had great numbers battling against Dallas. I think Miami will still have great numbers battling against Baltimore. Don't shy away from your Miami Baltimore plays. That's my advice. Adam's smarter than I am. That's why he's an NFL writer and I'm not. What do you think about this one, Adam?
I mean, yeah, like I agree with you for season long wise. Like don't get crazy and all of a sudden fade your Dolphins in your fantasy championship just because they're playing against the Ravens defense. Like I think you still can start them with confidence. I do think that this game is going to be on the lower scoring side. It's a super important game for both teams, right? If
Yeah.
Baltimore wins this game, they clinch the 1 seed. It's over. That race is done. They're the 1 seed. So Miami's still trying to get that. And Miami's still trying
Miami's
to
in
hang
danger.
on to their division. If they beat
Yeah.
Baltimore here, they clinch their division. If they lose to Baltimore, I referenced it earlier, all of a sudden week 18 against the Bills is for the division title. It's for a home game in the first round of the playoffs. It
Yeah,
is
they're
a
good to go.
massive, massive difference to be a division winner versus a wild card. So very important for both teams. Now, from DFS, this isn't a game I'm targeting for DFS. That's how I'll spin it with that. Like, I'm not afraid to start my guys season long. This isn't, like, I'm not spending up for Tyreek or Mostert or anybody like that for DFS. With the Rams, with the Niners, with some of the better options out there, I'd rather spend up on players like that than the Dolphins this week.
I hear you. The price tag does take it away. I think he'll still gonna have a game. Tennessee at Houston. Houston needs Stroud back. I would say he is looking good to come back though. And if that happens, Nico Collins could be a nice play for you. The running back room in Houston is you don't know who's going to step up. It has been Singletary lately, but I don't know. Tennessee's rush defense has been good, not necessarily so good of late. I don't like anybody from TSC. Tennessee is just too inconsistent. Even Derrick Henry, the main reason he made the list is because he threw one this week. I don't know if I really like anybody DFS wise, but depending on your budget, you could look at a Nico Collins in this one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, in season long, it's really hard to bench Henry or Hopkins. Those have kind of been the two Titans that are like in your lineups pretty much every week for season long. And then there's nobody else you can even consider on that team, for season long stuff. And then, yeah, I mean, the Texans, they just need CJ Stroud back. I agree with you. I want nothing to do with the running backs in Houston this week. Nico Collins, sure. Tennessee's passing defense, not great, but I'm only excited about Nico if Stroud's playing, right? Like I know he can
Yeah.
still produce without Stroud, but Collins becomes a much better play, obviously, with CJ Stroud in the lineup.
Last four, no Monday night game this week. Pittsburgh at Seattle. Both teams in must-win situations. Pittsburgh trying to protect that record, that 500 record, and if they lose this game, they're essentially out of playoff contention. Not that they would probably go very far, but that's why you play the game. Seattle, absolutely. This could be the difference between a season where they make the playoffs at least and see what they can do, or maybe they don't. Seattle, at least they're playing at home. DFS wise, I don't want to risk it. I just don't want to risk it. I'm not playing anything here. I don't like it because I don't want to risk it. Even budget wise, I can find better ceiling plays, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the only guy I'd consider for DFS here is maybe DK Metcalf. Like the Steelers do give up some big plays sometimes, and DK has been really the only consistent wide receiver from either team, right? Like he's been the only like reliable one. I'd stay away from all the running back situations. I'm kind of with you, like this one. And when you see Seahawks Steelers this late in the season, at least to me, it screams ugly,
Yeah,
defensive, low scoring,
yeah,
grinded out
yeah.
type of game in a Carroll Tomlin this late in the season. Yeah, no thanks for DFS.
Go Steelers. Chargers at Denver. I actually think you could get again some decent value plays here. Watch for the health of like Keenan Allen, etc. It's going to be ugly and for DFS wise, when you're talking fantasy numbers, especially in DF, ugly is not necessarily bad. In the fact that neither of these teams' defenses really step up. Certain Allen will be able to catch balls against Certain. There's very few receivers that can, but Allen is one of them. Denver Sutton. Against this Chargers defense, Sutton could get you points. I think he probably is still costs a little bit much. You can find better values, but I'm not excited DFS wise here. It's just I understand if you go here to find
Yeah, I
something.
mean, with Sutton, the thing to keep an eye on is if he's going to play, right? Like he was getting
Yeah, no,
evaluated, I
100%.
believe, for a concussion. He had the head injury, so that could be a loss for some people in their fantasy championships. Now, let me just say, side note with Cortland Sutton, if he is ruled out this week, if he can't play this week, a great DFS dart throw who literally will cost you nothing, and we already know he has explosive big play upside. What about Marvin Mims
Yeah.
as a DFS dart throw if Sutton's out? This guy's explosive as all hell, and like I don't understand why the Broncos haven't used him a
I
bit
don't
more this
either.
year. With Judy being irrelevant basically all season long, their offense desperate for big plays. They have to grind every single possession. They get no big plays at all. Why hasn't Mims been giving more opportunities? I just don't
I don't know.
understand it. If it takes, Sutton being ruled out for that to happen, now do not use Mims in season long. Do not go crazy and all
No,
of
no,
a
no.
sudden plug him into your lineup in a season long league. But he costs literally nothing in DFS. And if he is in that starting lineup, I'd spend for him in DFS because then you have more money to
Yes.
get your Rams, your
It's
Niners,
that
guys
silly
like
price
that. So
tag.
Shaheed and Mims are two cheap options with a lot of upside that I like for DFS this week.
Yeah, that's it. That price tag will get you better players, and it might pay off. Cincinnati at Kansas City. Yeah, sure. Why not? Kansas City has shown that you can get numbers here, and I don't know. I mean, you're risking it with Kansas City. Which Kansas City team's going to show up? I don't know. They're at home again. They got something to prove for their home crowd. You hope that they step up, but you can't guarantee it. This one's a little scary. There's definitely plays here if you want to risk it, but and they could pay off big. This is a boomer bust spot right here.
Yeah, I mean, like another injury situation we have to keep an eye on is Pacheco, right? Like he got evaluated for the head injury. He was ruled out for the rest of that game, possible concussion. So he could be out as well. Rashee Rice, you can definitely start Rashee Rice. The
Yeah,
Bengals passing defense has not been very good. And Rice, he's getting double digit targets now. He has emerged as that reliable wide receiver one in that Chiefs system. We've been waiting for somebody to do it for a couple of years now. It looks like Rice is finally safe. He finally has, I think, a high enough floor that you can use him pretty consistently in your season long lineups. A lot of targets over the last month. So, he's a guy I like here.
uh, don't play whoever wide receiver one. If Chase comes back, don't play Chase. If it's T Higgins, don't play T Higgins. I know T Higgins is top 10 2 weeks in a row. Snead still absolutely shutting down wide receiver ones. Whoever the wide receiver one is, don't play them. I'm telling you. And people are like, this will be the week. He shut down Hill. He shut down Brown. He shut down Adams twice. He shut down the biggest. He shut down Chase. He shut down the biggest wide receivers in the game. Don't challenge Snead. Don't don't do it
He's going to
because
be a
you'll
first team All Pro probably this year. He's been unbelievable.
yeah, absolutely unbelievable. And your last game, your night game, Green Bay at Minnesota. Playoff implications for both teams. Loser likely out. Both teams definitely able to get scored on. This should be a high scoring one. I understand why they kept it here. There's implications. Defenses are not fantastic. Points, yardage, all that stuff can go up. Find DFS plays here because I think they'll work for you. The problem is you have to pick which receiver do you want to spend on an Aaron Jones who's been so inconsistent. But I like Love in this one. I'm probably if Watson is there, a Love Watson relationship would be great for your DFS roster. I'm more like the Minnesota side of it. Obviously, when you can pay nothing for a Nick Mullins who put up 411 yards, so that you can pair him up with a Justin Jefferson. It's obviously going to be a great play. It's going to pay off. I don't like Minnesota running room ever, but definitely some things that you could do here. Get yourself a cheap quarterback to get the best wide receiver in the game, and then move on from there.
Yeah, like I don't know if I'm as high on this one from DFS perspective, just because the Packers usually the way you beat the Packers is on the ground, right? Their
Bryce
defense is
Young
so much
throws for
better.
300. I mean,
Yeah. Like, usually they're a lot better against the pass. Jefferson, I mean, there's no question about season long type of stuff, but he's not the guy that I'd want to spend up on this week in DFS. So, we differ just a little bit on that one.
it
Mullins,
happens.
super dirt cheap. So, like one of the cheapest options you can get. So, like, I don't hate that just because he has upside for the price. So yeah, for me, this is a little bit of a trickier DFS, and then the Packers too. With I never know what Packers receiver to
That's the
trust this
problem.
year.
Yeah.
Like that's the issue for me. So I usually fade all of them because I don't know which one it's going to be week to week. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I don't love this one DFS too much.
I just think there's value to be had. I don't think this is your primary roster. This is the one that you kind of throw into that $5 game, or that maybe you got that free entry or something like that. You could definitely throw it out there, see what happens as you're putting together multiple lineups. I just think this is a place you could go to possibly get some value and see what you can do with the bigger names you can afford. As always, we are over, but we appreciate you guys sticking around with us. Again, comments, hit us up. Anytime you want on the X or Instagram. You see I am at that effing show on both places. You can hit Adam up at Adam Hulse Sports. He is an NFL writer at Sportskeeda. That's Keto with a K. Just put in sportskeeda.com, put Adam Hulse, get all his daily NFL content. I mean, he just cranks it out. I don't know where he has time. You hear the kids in the background, and somehow he still manages to crank out like double-digit articles every week. It's ridiculous. And kids wicked smart. We leave you with this, and feel free to chime in if you're viewing at home. On the way out the door, who's your MVP pick this week?
Season MVP.
Yep.
I think it's Lamar Jackson. I think he just kind of put a stranglehold on it. I always talk about you need a signature performance when you're going to win the MVP. Last night was his signature performance, head to head with the best team in the NFL, who everybody was considering unbeatable at this point. He balled out while the guy who was the favorite threw 4 interceptions. I think Lamar Jackson just propelled himself right to the top of the list.
Big players got to show up in big games, and Purdy hurt himself, but Baltimore did it for him with those 4 interceptions. He kind of put himself in that Dak Prescott room with that. Guys that deserve it, guys that should be more in the conversation, that shouldn't be pigeonholed because of individual performances. But when you're playing against another guy who's in the conversation and he does that to you, you definitely got to be in the back seat for it. I still think Allen is a nice guy for it, but I agree with you after what we saw last night. Lamar has to be in the lead, and we'll see how these last 2 games come out. Thanks for
If
joining us.
Allen can ball out these last 2 weeks, he has to
Yeah.
win out, though. He has to
Oh,
beat the
100%.
Patriots and he has to beat the Dolphins and he has to look good doing it. If he can do that, ball out for 2 weeks and 2 wins, steal the division from the Dolphins, even, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, the
That'd make a
Bills
big
could be
case.
like the 2 seed in the AFC. Then Allen's name for sure is going to be in that mix.
And right now he's at the top in the major category, so that's why I still like Allen. It's that effing morning after show. We're here every Tuesday, even the day after Christmas. We are here with you. We will be here next week, and playoff picture is going to get a lot clearer after next week. We'll still have a couple games that won't. We're going to throw out all the best stats like we do every single week. You'll get them all right here. You'll get the best NFL information with Adam Hulse at over on Sportskeeda, Keto with a K. Put in Adam Hulse. You can reach him at Adam Hulse Sports. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around. We will see you guys next week. Best of luck in your fantasy championships. If you made it, I hope you win that money. Come back and tell us about it next week. We'll be here at that effing sports show. Everybody be safe. And I guess it's still not Happy New Year, but Happy New Year's Eve next week. We'll see you guys then. Take care.